Welcome to this edition of Healthline. I'm Dr. Kevin Soden. Do you continually struggle to get simple things done or forget about important tasks altogether? Well, it may not be just another senior moment, especially if it started happening long before you were a senior. You may have attention deficit disorder, and as the man in our next story discovered, ADHD isn't just for kids anymore.
Ed Popper loves to cook. He loves it so much that he remodeled his entire kitchen to help indulge his hobby. It wasn't cheap. But Ed is a former business school dean, which means by now he should be pretty good at managing his money. But Ed's wife says it's not always true.
Sort of serendipitously, accidentally, I found out he hadn't paid the real estate taxes in 7 quarters. And I went into the tax office to pay it, and the woman says, "Is the man still alive?"
But Ed had always had issues dealing with day-to-day things like bills and deadlines. He earned 2 graduate degrees from Harvard, but flunked out of undergraduate school 3 times.
So I had a very spotty academic record. I wasn't a person who consistently got gentlemanly C's. I was a person who got A's and D's or A's and F's.
Ed never really gave those inconsistencies a second thought until the day he took his daughter to the doctor, thinking she might have attention deficit disorder.
And we had her evaluated and diagnosed. And as I went through the material, evaluating it, and my wife looked at it as well, it started to seem like I was exhibiting some of the same symptoms.
Very frequently what brings adults through the door at our clinic is their children.
Dr. Theresa Cerulli is a psychiatrist with ADD Health and Wellness Centers in Massachusetts. She says that many parents think attention deficit disorder is just a problem for school kids. They don't realize they may have it themselves. Attention deficit disorder is a condition with a strong genetic component.
The majority of the time this is as heritable as height. So it is, I want to really emphasize, it is very biologically based. It is neurodevelopmental. You don't just develop ADD later in life. You might get diagnosed later in life because it went unrecognized, but you don't develop it later in life.
The hallmarks of ADD are impulsivity, inattention, and hyperactivity. But hyperactivity symptoms often dissipate as we age.
I would replace that with the word restlessness. So if the adult with ADD is bouncing their leg while you're talking or watching a movie, they're drumming their fingers, they're shifting in their seat. So in an adult, I'd use the word restless as a better description.
For Ed, impulsivity meant interrupting in nearly every conversation.
He has a tendency to assume the rest of your sentence, or maybe it's just that he can't stand to hear a whole sentence at once.
Communication is a real issue.
Match the card on the bottom.
Inattentiveness can present as forgetfulness or the inability to stay on task. But a true ADD diagnosis requires an in-depth evaluation, one that involves extensive psychological testing, often with input from family members, which helps to rule out other possible problems such as dementia or depression.
Inattention is just a symptom. Could be caused by bad night's sleep. Inattention can be caused by thyroid problems, by the fact that you just had an argument with your spouse that day before you walked out the door. So it's just a symptom.
Patients who are diagnosed with ADD often find it's intertwined in their lives. Missed deadlines create professional and financial problems, and communication problems create stress at home.
Starts to really resonate what it was like for them as a kid, except there wasn't a name to put to it. They just thought they were lazy, flaky, stupid, all sorts of wonderful negative self-talk that occurred in those years because they didn't understand what was happening. They knew they were different.
I suddenly was able to understand patterns of behavior in my life, and why some things worked and other things didn't.
Medications such as Ritalin act as stimulants to keep the brain focused, and Ed has found they help his patients in conversations.
The medication, I would say at this point it's a personal decision. You made it this far in life without it, It's not necessary for survival, but it helps you be able to be more you. Just to address.
Talk therapy helps Ed to deal with emotional issues and find ways to manage his disorder. Meeting deadlines can still be an issue, but now he knows what he's been struggling with his whole life.
It's not a choice you make or a personality flaw. You're wired different. There's something going on organically, and that kind of helps me feel like, okay, so I'm not quite the bad person that I might have thought I was. I still have more than my share of crises, but in many ways the day-to-day stuff seems to be working pretty well.